I'd like to just acknowledge our sponsors. As you've seen, just scrolling through here, a number of our sponsors. They are the Townsville City Council, the Victoria State Government, the Dog and Cat Management Board of South Australia, Ballarat Mailworks, AIAM Australia, Brion Defence Systems, Kong, Microchips Australia, and Database Consultants Australia, also known as DCA. And like Gary said, can you please take the time to have a look at our sponsors' displays out there during the breaks. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Maryanne Leighton. Maryanne Leighton is a horsewoman, educator, author and feature writer. She conducts large animal rescue information workshops throughout Australia and New Zealand, and audiences describe her presentations to AGMs, seminars, clubs and groups as powerful, compelling and not to be missed. Now I can probably vouch for that, as Maryanne successfully ran a training day yesterday on large animal rescue in Townsville, and I thank you for that. All the feedback has been absolutely wonderful. Maryanne's had a number of careers in public relations, marketing and horse stud management. She bred horses for 20 years, both her own national champions and for studs that ranged in size from 2 stallions and 20 mares to 7 stallions and 400 mares. She has travelled extensively and, apart from horse-related themes, has written about subjects as diverse as the European Space Agency, which I'm quite interested in hearing about actually, when we're over a drink. The use of computer systems within an abattoir and the intensity of the darkness in the bowels of Mount Isa mines. I'd just like to introduce Maryanne Leighton.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone. My presentation this morning will be focused mostly on horses, because not only is my background in horses, but worldwide, about 98% of all rescues of large animals involve horses. So that gives you an idea of what the animal is and sort of tells you all you need to know about horses, obviously. When people talk about horses, the phrase flight or fight is often heard. Now, flight is easy. You give a horse a fright and it'll run away. However, if it can't run away because it's trapped, it fights. And for your own safety, even though I know most of you don't deal with horses or other large animals, for your own safety, I want to tell you exactly what we mean when we say fight. Horses are prey animals. That means they're motivated by fear. Ideally, when they're threatened, they'll run away. If they can't, preferably they'll run to the safety of the herd, because there's safety in numbers. That lion may choose to eat and kill maybe a smaller animal or an older one that's vulnerable. However, if they can't run because they're trapped, they'll fight, and they are fighting for their lives. It doesn't matter that horses have been domesticated for 6,000 years. And it doesn't matter how many hundreds of hours we humans have spent domesticating, handling, desensitising and training our horses. A tiny part of every domesticated horse remains wild. And when that horse is in distress, it will revert to its wild instinctive state. And what happens with horses, we have here a horse that is trapped, it's fallen into a water tank. It will fight, and this is the level of energy that it puts into fighting. Now, you wouldn't want to get involved with an animal that's reacting like that, would you? You wouldn't go anywhere near it. But what they do is they stop. And people think, okay, it's stopped, it's fine, it's safe to go in and try and rescue it. But what you must remember that a horse is an unpredictable animal. We say that it is a dangerous object that may explode without warning. And what it will do, it will, without warning, fight again. And it will keep doing this cycle of fighting and stopping, and it'll be quite calm, and it looks just wonderful until it starts fighting again. It will do this until it is either dead, it is totally exhausted and has no energy left, or a vet has arrived to sedate or anaesthetise it. So please bear in mind, for your own safety, that a trapped horse is a dangerous object that may explode without warning. Fortunately, these rescues don't happen very often, but when they do, they are totally unpredictable. You cannot say, or a horse owner may say to you, my horse is really quiet, he will do this, that or the other. Don't believe them. The horses that are stressed are totally unpredictable. They are, as you've seen, highly dangerous. You've got to treat these situations as an emergency and treat it accordingly. Unfortunately, because our emergency responders are not routinely trained in large animal rescue techniques yet, sometimes these rescues go wrong. So we say, for your safety, for the safety of emergency responders, for the animal's safety, you've got to treat every trapped large animal as though it were a hazardous material, and that is a dangerous object that may explode without warning. Please, if you are ever come across an overturned horse float, or a horse that's trapped, or a cow or a camel that's trapped in mud, a muddy dam or whatever, you can't do it yourself. You must call 000 and ask for a rescue team. And I know in some remote places that isn't always possible, but please bear in mind that your safety is your first priority. So we define large animal rescue as moving a large animal from a place of danger to a place of safety, with overriding regard for the welfare of everyone, that is, the horse owner, the emergency responders, and the animal itself. We do not want to injure or kill that animal, and we don't want anyone on the scene to be injured or killed. Because horses in particular are so unpredictable, you cannot have standard operating procedures. I wrote the Australian Guide to Large Animal Rescue to give guidelines to these rescues, but there's not hard and fast rules for every rescue. Please never, ever attach ropes or winches or chains to an animal's head, ears, neck, tail or legs. Ask yourself, would you do this to a human? And if the answer is no, then the answer is you do not do it to an animal either. And there's very, very good reasons why we say never pull an animal out with a tractor, four-wheel drive or other vehicle. It's because you cannot feel that if that animal is trapped, say it has its legs caught in mud and there's barbed wire wrapped around those legs, if by the time that the message that the animal is stuck, there's resistance, that message gets to the driver of the vehicle, it may be too late. And this is what happened here. This, we believe, was in New Zealand. There you go. Because of the fences in the background. No one worldwide has admitted to owning up to taking these photographs or owning the mare. And you can understand why. She went down in her float. The owner had no clue what to do. A local farmer came by on his tractor, said, I can help. I have a chain in my tractor. And what he did was he attached the chain to her tailbone and the other end of the chain to his tractor. And he pulled. Now, apart from the fact that you can see that her tailbone has been ripped out, her spinal column is exposed, there's something else in this photograph that really doesn't sit well with me. Can anybody tell me what it is? She's wearing a rug, and it looks as though they're treating that wound. And we were told that the mare was in foal, and they kept her alive until after she had foaled. Now, that is a welfare issue. So this is why we say, where possible, pull by hand, because you can feel if something is going wrong. Typical rescues. Mud is a real problem, and it's not just, we don't just have this problem in Australia, it is a worldwide. It is the number one largest problem that we have with rescuing large animals. It is the most difficult rescue to undertake. It requires a lot of planning. It's also extremely dangerous. Not a very good photo here, but this is a video of trying to manipulate rescue equipment in really sticky mud. And that will give you an idea of just what you're up against. If you are ever called or come across an animal trapped in mud, please remember, if there's only one message you take home from this presentation this morning, the one thing that you must remember with mud rescue is that you have to release the suction of the mud from around the animal's feet and legs. And if you don't do that, this is the outcome. They've got everything right, They just forgot to release the suction of the mud from around the feet and legs. And it doesn't matter how hard you pull, you can't overcome that. Incidents involving horse floats are the second most common, and this is worldwide, it's not just Australia. If the animal is contained within a float, even though it's overturned, even though it's maybe partially in pieces because it's been in an accident, leave it there until you've made your plans. If it's when the animal is ejected through the sides or the roof of the float and ends up on the road, that it will be injured or killed. But if you can, and if you come across a horse float that's been involved in an incident on the road, please tell them to close all the doors and windows, don't allow the animal to escape onto a road, ask them to move to a safe place. Water, horses and humans do not mix. Water is the fourth most common cause of accidental death worldwide, and more people die from drowning than die in fire. So please never ever, even with our massive floods that we have, don't get into water with horses to try and rescue them. The reason is we cannot move quickly in water, and horses are explosively dangerous. Fortunately, these emergency responders are wearing safety harnesses, so their buddies are able to pull them to safety. You simply cannot get away in time, can you? You can't move. And in mud, you don't get in mud with animals either. You work from a platform. Sinkholes appear everywhere, and usually without warning. There are methods of getting animals out of sinkholes, pipes and drains and mine shafts. This horse was in a rubbish dump in Los Angeles, and why it was in the rubbish dump in Los Angeles, who knows? It's a big horse. They did manage to get it out without killing it, which is a huge achievement. Septic tanks are also very common, particularly in dry times when people allow their horses to pick grass in their backyards. I have no problems with that. I just ask people to fence off their septic tank lids. Also, water tanks, in-ground water tanks. Now, some of you may know Mark Duncan from Scenic Rim Council. Anybody here? Yeah. Okay. Mark and Scenic Rim had an in-ground water tank in their pound, and for about 20 years, cattle were impounded in that yard, horses were impounded, they parked utes in that yard, until about 3 years ago when one of the rangers backed his ute over the lid of the tank and it collapsed, and they realised that the lid was only that thick. So now that in-ground tank is actually fenced off. So in-ground tanks are a big problem. We have here a trapped horse in a confined space, and if any of you have ever been involved with confined space rescue, you know how dangerous it is. We have a dangerous object that may explode without warning in this very small cement concrete tank. There is a hole at the bottom and there's added hazards of these metal pieces sticking out. That is an incredibly dangerous situation, and you would not go anywhere near that horse until a vet had sedated it. Swimming pools are great. In the winter we put covers on them. Horses don't know that a swimming pool cover is not a solid, and they will walk over it. In winter you also have the added hazards of hypothermia. Fences and gates, I mean, so many horses have delusions of grandeur about how high they can jump, and this is often a common result. It is, in this case, that's a male horse, it's a gelding. It could be life-threatening to him, because if this pipe were putting pressure on his penis or his sheath it could cut off the blood supply, and it has been known that stallions and geldings have had to have their penises amputated, and that's not a good thing. Elderly horses are particularly susceptible to falling down cliffs and into gullies and ditches, and even just shallow depressions in their paddock can be enough to have them cast, and they can die if you don't get to them quickly enough. This is an interesting situation. The horse has reared up and caught his foot in the fork of the tree. It was a stallion at the beginning of the breeding season, and he was doing what stallions do. There were mares in season, and he was reacting to them. He was running around, he was screaming and rearing up, and he got his foot caught. Now, the owner did the right thing, dialed 000, called a vet. The vet has come and anaesthetised the animal. He's totally unconscious. And the SES arrived, and they used their rope systems. They supported that limb before they cut it and lowered it to safety. Now, I talk a lot in my workshops about risk assessment, and I tell people to go home and look at their own properties, particularly when I'm dealing with horse owners, and have a look at the hazards that are in their own properties. This gentleman, the stallion survived. He started breeding the mares. Everything went well. 2 months later, SES received a call from the same gentleman. It was the same stallion, the same paddock, but a different tree. So obviously he hadn't conducted a risk assessment in his own property. Cattle grids are lethal for horses. They really are. And they take a lot of heavy specialist equipment to cut these rails. They're really, really difficult to cut if the cattle grid is made properly. If any of you are horse owners and you ride across wooden bridges, can I please ask you to go the other way? Some wooden bridges are lethal, and you don't see it until you're actually on it, that it's rotted. Very, very difficult to rescue animals from this situation, and it's very common for emergency responders to actually walk underneath to see what's going on underneath, and that's got to be a no-no. So just to make you feel a little better, it doesn't just happen to horse owners and property owners, graziers, whatever. It also happens to the Queen. Now, here we have the King's Troop doing one of their magnificent displays that they are so good at and that they do so often. But if you look, it's quite difficult to see. There's a horse on the ground there. This horse's name is Murphy, was Murphy. He has got too close to the gun carriage, and his foot and leg is trapped between the wheel and the gun carriage, and it's snapped. Horses' legs are very fragile. This is the British Army, and the British Army has a plan for everything. Everybody knows that plan, and everybody knows what they have to do when something goes wrong. Every single person in that photograph has a job to do, and they know exactly what it is. So the first thing that the soldiers do is they come around and they form a human cordon around the downed horse. So these soldiers here have their backs to Murphy, they're looking forward, and they're preventing people in the audience from taking photographs and videos to put up on Facebook as this is happening. At the very least, anyone who is involved in pony club or event management should have a screen, because sooner or later a horse is going to break a leg or come a cropper, and you are going to need to screen it from the view of the public. So the British Army has a screen, they erect the screen, the vet is behind there, he euthanizes the horse, and then they reverse a horse ambulance into behind the screen, and very discreetly and professionally they remove the dead animal. Please be aware that there are no safe areas around a horse in distress. There are only places that are marginally safer. Your danger zones are really anywhere around an animal. They've got sharp edges, they've got weapons at each end, and they know how to use them. The head weighs between 60 and 80 kilos. It's on the end of a very long neck, so you have a 60 to 80 kilo club, and they will use it. There is not much meat on a horse's head. It's mostly bone. The teeth are yellow, they're dirty, they're long. They are sharp enough to tear chunks of flesh from your body, and they are strong enough to pick a grown man and throw him from here to that first table over there. Front legs, they'll come up and rear up and kick you with their front legs. They can kick to the back, to the side and forward with their back legs. Your only marginally safe place to stand when you're next to a horse is at the shoulder, but even I have stood there and been kicked from there by a horse. He got me twice in the elbow before I realised what he was doing. And just to top it off, they will run over the top of you if they can't escape, and if that doesn't work, they will crowd you, crush you, roll on top of you, or lie on top of you, or just generally trample you. This is a young man who is on a cycling tour somewhere in Europe, and he's seen the nice horsies. There's a group of mares and foals. This mare is showing through her body language that she is not happy. Her ears are slightly back. He knows nothing about horses. He doesn't know that that is a danger signal. She got him, and she got him a good one. Here we have a situation at the races. Watch this horse and this cameraman. Would you like to see that again? It comes back for another go, and then another go. There is nothing random about a kick from a horse. Never assume that because you've been kicked it was an accident. The horse will choose which part of your body to target and how hard to kick. This is a really, really interesting statement. A survey has been done, probably in the States, 2015. Equestrian sports cause some of the highest rates of total bodily injury, severe brain injury, and mortality. And you don't even have to be riding them to suffer these injuries or be killed. Please never ever try to rescue a trapped large animal yourself. Call 000 112 from mobile phones, because that will identify your closest mobile phone tower and will get help to you quicker. Please call a vet, because the animal must be sedated or anaesthetised before you can even attempt to rescue it. Please try to remain calm, because if you are distressed, the animal will pick up on that. If it is safe to do so, give the animal a little bit of hay, because strangely enough, food is a natural sedative for horses. When emergency services arrive, this is a message particularly for horse owners: let them do their job. Very important that they are allowed to do their job. When emergency responders arrive, introduce yourself to the incident controller and the vet, and just offer them your help if you can. If they're not trained in large animal rescue techniques, the book I wrote, which will be available at morning tea time at the reception desk, is there for emergency responders who have not been trained in large animal rescue techniques. It contains step-by-step instructions for every type of rescue, and the idea behind it is that it will help keep their teams safe and also make the rescue go a lot faster. Horse owners, if you go to a scene where there is a horse, you will have an owner there, and the horse owner will assume that will never happen to them. It does. They will also try to rescue their animal themselves. That doesn't work. Never get too close to the trapped animal, because as you've seen, they are explosive. Never assume that if the horse is just lying there, it will not move, because this is what they do. They explode, they lie still, they explode, they lie still. Never allow the horse owner to handle the animal itself, because they are not trained the way that emergency responders are trained. And with the emergency incident control system, every emergency responder, whether it be a fire and rescue, whether it be rural fire brigades, SES, paramedics, police, they are all trained within the same system, so that when the safety officer says, it's getting a bit dangerous, get out now, they will drop what they're doing and get out. The horse owner will particularly say, why? And it may be too late. Never assume that the animal is okay after the rescue. There are things that can go wrong internally. There are chemical changes that can happen when horses are trapped for a length of time. And these changes can keep going on. These chemical reactions keep going on for a couple of days, and the horse may drop dead 2 days later. So it needs to be checked by a vet. never ever remove your helmet. Now, if you are at a scene, you don't have a helmet and there is a rescue team there, please ask them if you can borrow a helmet. Your brain is worth more than the animal. Risk assessment again. Can this animal be safely rescued? Is it physically possible to rescue it? If not, it can't be rescued. And the option in that case is probably euthanasia. Keep it simple, because the more difficult you make it, the more complex the rescue, the more chance there is that things will go wrong. Always have a halter and a long lead rope if you're rescuing horses. If they're cattle, you've got to have some way of controlling them once they're out. Focus on the casualty, not the technical aspects. We have discovered just recently that when the focus is actually on the trapped individual, the rescue is far more successful than if the technical rescue specialists get a bit carried away with what they like to do. Always have somewhere safe to put the animal. I mean, it's just the worst thing you can do to drag an animal out of a horse float and then have it standing on the side of the road, a busy road particularly. Please be aware that releasing the animal can be the most dangerous part of the operation, because they say thank you, or they won't say thank you, they will just go, and they will run over the top of you if they need to. Always have an escape route. Always have an escape route, and be aware that because the animal is dynamic and is going to be moving around, that your escape route may be compromised, so you need a backup and another backup and another backup escape route. It's very interesting that you don't need a lot of specialised equipment for this sort of work. 80% relies on using the correct techniques. And it does work. 20 years ago in the UK, only 4 to 6% of the 1,000 rescues of large animals that they conduct each year were successful. Now, we're up to 96%, now that their crews are trained in large and aware of large animal rescue. It makes a huge difference knowing what to do. So, 95% of rescues will use 2 rescue straps, which are wide, soft straps. We can improvise. We can use fire hose. If there's a rural fire brigade there, they can use some of their fire hose, with or without the metal connectors on the ends. We need ropes, so we can improvise. We could, at the very pinch, you could probably use snatch straps from a 4-wheel drive recovery kit, but they are pretty narrow and they've got sharp edges, so be aware that the wider your strap is, the less damage to the tissue that you're going to do. A strop guide enables us to get these straps around the animal without fighting. So it's 2 metres long, it has a hook on one end and a handle on the other end, and we start with the handle on one side, push it underneath the animal, hook, loop our rescue strap onto the hook, and then just pull it straight underneath the animal into any configuration that you need. For mud rescue, confined space rescue, and sometimes for water rescue, you need to be able to get the straps around the animal with one person doing it. So this is a curved, it's like a suture needle or an upholstery needle, but it's a curved piece of pipe with the end. One end we've got a garden hose type fitting because you don't need a lot of pressure. The other end we have a loop so that we can attach a line to it. A few holes to allow the water to ease the path of the needle through the mud, very important. And then this responder is working from a platform, as you must do in mud. He is wearing a safety harness, a helmet and gloves. He has a light, what we call a pilot line, attached to the end of his Nicopolis needle. And what he's doing is he's going to push that around the horse's body until it comes up to this side. Someone will pass him a rescue strap. He will tie it to about there on his pilot line, and then he will pull it back underneath the horse and around to himself. And it's so simple. Not easy. In mud, it's definitely not easy. And then if you need 2 straps to do a sideways drag, then he will do the same around the animal's flank. What happens when you are working with trapped animals and you need to do something? If you use your hand, you bend over, your head follows your hand, your head goes into the kicking zone. So please use extensions to your arms. They can be J-hooks, as they're using here. They can be shepherd's crooks. an umbrella with a curved handle or your grandmother's walking stick, whatever. And a rescue glide, which is basically a stretcher for horses, really. If you're going over rough terrain or up and down hills, you will need to strap the animal on, and obviously to do that, the animal must be anaesthetised before you put it on, but you would sedate before you do any of this anyway. If you are just going across a piece of gravel or some rough ground, you may not necessarily want to strap the animal on it, that's not a problem. But be aware that the animal must be sedated, and we use the glide because a horse's skin is thinner than ours. So we wouldn't drag humans across bitumen or gravel drives, so let's not do it to horses. We'll stick them on a rescue glide and do it that way. So what we do, if we don't tie ropes around their necks, their necks and legs and tails, we use their strength of their body and the strength of the skeleton, the large surface area, because they have a huge surface area. We put one strap for just about every single technique that we use, whether it's whatever drag that we're using or a lift that we're using, we use only two parts of the body. One strap around there and the other strap around there, and in different configurations depending what we're doing. So if we are able to do so, the best option is to do a sideways drag. You have 2 points of contact with the animal. You are putting less pressure on one part of the animal's body, so you're spreading the load. You need one strap around its girth, the other strap around the flank, and 2 teams to pull. You must distribute the load, you must balance the animal. It's useless putting those two straps together and pulling, because then you lose control of what happens. So if we have only one point of pull, watch what happens, what can happen. So the animal becomes unbalanced. It is obviously not sedated very well. And you're back where you started. So that animal is now stimulated because you've already worked on him. You've dragged him across the ground, which he doesn't like. And it's going to make your job that much more hard. This is a really good rescue of a little pony that walked across a swimming pool cover and fell through. This is probably the world's leading large animal rescue team. It's Hampshire Fire and Rescue in the UK, and they are just so generous with sharing their knowledge and their understanding. It's just amazing. So we have a vet who has sedated the pony. They are going to do a sideways drag and pull him up over here onto this tarp, which is nice and slippery, and drag him away until he's at a place of safety. Okay, they're only going to take him as far as they need to, because then they will be dragging him on grass. The controls they use are ready to haul, stop, and release. And on release, they will pull the ropes from the rescue straps so that maybe when the pony stands up, everything will fall off. Sometimes, if the pony is not sedated quite enough, he will stand up before everybody's ready, which is what happens in this case. So watch his legs, they've rolled up. There is a risk that he could actually roll over completely. So stop, release. All the straps come off. And everybody's happy. The pony's out, the owner is very happy, the team is quite satisfied. Your second option is to do a backwards drag, which is, again, the animal must be sedated. And we'll see here, this is a trained demonstration horse. This is Rebecca's horse, for you guys who trained with Rebecca a couple of years ago. And you will see that she is not sedated. She gets lots of treats, she gets lots of encouragement, but even though she does this as her day job, she does not like it. Okay, so let's see what happens. You can imagine, if that were just your paddock horse that was not sedated and you tried to put a strap between its back legs and drag it backwards, you would have a wreck. There would be people all over the place, down like skittles. Our final option, and the one that we like least and we use least unless we have to, is a forward assist. There are two ways of doing it. We put the strap over the horse's neck, equal lengths come between its front legs, and you pull on those. But that can be a little bit tricky because if they flex their elbows, they can flick themselves out. This is a more secure way. You have the loop on the short end here and put the other end through it and pull. You snug it up until it's nice and snug, and you drag that way. And here we have our animal rescue specialist in the UK. He's wearing a green helmet, so everybody on the team knows who he is. He has a shepherd's crook where he's manipulating this leg so it doesn't get injured. This gentleman is lifting the horse's head off the ramp, because the other thing you must do is either put a head protector on the animal. You've got to protect that downside eye, the eye that's closest to the ground. They're a prey animal, their eyes are bulbous, and they can get injured very easily. And then we have a rollover. Sometimes you need to roll a horse over to stimulate it into standing up, or if you need to get it on its other side because it's in recovery mode. So there are two ways of doing that. The simple way is to put one strap around its legs and then just pull, and that strap comes off, and all those responders then are able to get right out of the way in case the animal is stimulated into standing up. And here we have a video of it. So everybody gets straight out of the danger zone, well away from the kicking zone. A vertical lift, sometimes your only option is to lift the animal vertically. You can't drag it out, you can't get at it any other way, you have to lift it vertically. It is really, really important that it is done properly. You must have a 2-point lift, so you need a spreader bar, preferably with a quick release system on it. So your straps must be really wide. The wider the better, because obviously you're going to be lifting 500 odd kilos and you don't want to damage the animal. You've got one around the girth. You have a spill strap here at the chest. There should be a spill strap at the back to stop the animal spilling out backwards. If you have only one point of contact here, the animal can fall forward or backwards out of its sling. What happens here with this rear strap is it does put pressure on the abdomen. It pushes the abdominal contents forward, which places pressure on the heart and lungs. It also puts pressure on the diaphragm so the animal can't breathe properly. So your lift must be for no more than 5 minutes. Most lifts will take between 30 seconds to a minute, but definitely no longer than 5 minutes. Here we have another trained demonstration horse, and this is his day job. He has done this, at this point he'd done this lift about 50 times. So what happens when you lift a horse vertically without sedation must be sedated. As soon as their feet leave the ground, they'll start to panic and they'll start to fight, and they fight big time. And then, you know, when you pick up a kitten by the scruff of the neck, they sort of relax into it. That happens, that's the same reflex happens with horses. They relax into it until their feet touch the ground again, at which time they will start to fight again. So let's watch this guy. So they have already lifted him before the video started. He's nearly thrown himself out of that front sling. And as soon as his front feet touch the ground, they hit the quick release and all the slings fall down. Now, ideally, it would be better if those slings weren't joined so that they fell to the ground. But because this is a trained horse, he puts up with it. Your average horse certainly would not. Now, I say that this is his day job. He had done this 50 times before this video was taken. The 51st time, they had almost got everything connected, and he said, no, I'm not doing this anymore, and he bolted. And he pulled that A-frame down on top of himself. Fortunately, no humans were injured, but he was seriously injured. He had a fairly serious head injury, and he was out of action for quite some time. So the people in the States have now got a mannequin, a full-size rubber horse with his colouring. And they sometimes use the mannequin, they sometimes use the live horses, but they are a lot more careful these days about how they use their live animals. With Queensland Horse Council, we will not use live animals in our training because there is no safe scenario, as we've just seen here. I mean, you cannot guarantee that because these horses have done this for so many years, that they're going to continue doing it without complaining.
As you've seen, rescuing horses is far from a soft humanitarian service. It's a dangerous, unpredictable activity. One that the emergency services have never been formally trained for. So why does the Fire and Rescue Service continue to rescue horses? In short, to stop members of the public doing it.
Now, that horse was really quiet. He was trapped in a creek. The owner called 999 because it was in the UK. The fireys turned up, and this is going back some years before we knew that we really do have to sedate every time. And the owner said, look, he's not concerned, he's fine, put the straps on him, they put the slings on him, they started to lift, and he just hung there. They brought him around to a place of safety, which was solid ground. As soon as his feet touched the ground, this is the result that they had. And if you look at it again, he throws off his halter, so they have absolutely no control. They've got no means of controlling him once he stops fighting. They have no quick release on that lifting system, so they've got no way to actually let him go. And we don't know what happened. We don't know if he actually pulled that truck over. Don't know. It is very, very important at the conclusion of one of these rescues that you debrief, and that the owner and the vet is involved, and that the debrief happens before everybody goes home. If you are at one of these scenes, please insist on being involved with the debrief because it's a learning thing for everybody. On page 123 of my book, Equine Emergency Rescue, there are 2 phone numbers, and I know a lot of you won't have that book, but it is available out there if you want it, and if you don't want to get the book, email me and I'll send you the numbers anyway. Because you just never know. You may be driving along and come across something that you need help with. The first one is a vet called Derek Major, and you can ring him anytime, 24/7, day or night, if the vet on scene doesn't really know what to do with sedation, what combination of drugs to use, how much to use. And it can be very confronting for vets to realise that at these situations they may need to give up to 10 times, 8 to 10 times the normal dose of sedation. That is really confronting. The second phone number is Anthony Hatch, and he's a technical rescue specialist from Fire and Rescue New South Wales. He teaches SES and fireys down in New South Wales, and he also travels around Australia with a vet teaching equine vets about large animal rescue. Now, these were 2 rescues where people had been to my workshops and they weren't really confident enough. They thought they knew what they were doing, but they weren't confident enough to go ahead with it. This first one was at Bundaberg. The horse had gone into mud, and the RSPCA inspector said, yes, I think I should be doing a forward assist. So she rang Hatchie and sent him photographs on her mobile phone. He talked her through the rescue, and she was right. It's exactly what she should have done. The old mare on the right, she was on the Gold Coast. The vet at the scene had done one of these workshops, and he thought, I don't know. I really don't know what to do. We can't lead her forward. We can't lead her back. There's a little bit of land on this side, but there's only water on that side. So he rang Hatchie, again sent photographs, and they did a sideways drag over those pipes. Thank you very much for your attention. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you.